I think a lot about entertainment, obviously. I'm also interested in the mind. So naturally, I follow chess as a spectator sport. I might actually be the only person who does. Because, despite the game being one of the most sophisticated ever invented, it gets surprisingly little interest, which translates to little money for the players, and even a sort of comedy element to the game where the brilliant grandmasters have to put up with lots of nonsense from the few journalists and fans who actually do watch the game.
Obviously, I've been doing
your best means doing your best. I don't know why you don't understand English.
But it doesn't have to be that way. I realized this over my own years of watching the coverage and studying what people respond to. And of course, there are many commentators and sponsors who have made serious efforts to get more coverage and funding for the game. And they've made some progress, but I actually think there could be a lot more. And that's what I want to talk about. A few changes in approach and a rather radical technical concept that I think could revolutionize chess as a spectator sport and make a major difference to the lives and careers of the people who play it. I actually played chess when I was younger, and I won a few youth tournaments despite only knowing one opening. If someone played something else, I just figure it out as I went. But in a way, I think that makes me an ideal person to think about this problem. Because while I respect the game and can understand it, I haven't studied it. So what draws my interest is basically in line with the average potential chess viewer. Which is good, because there are a lot more average people than there are chess masters. And if you want to make a successful restaurant, you focus on the customer and not the chef. So with that in mind, let's look at those customers, what people actually react to, and how they follow games as fans. The easiest way to do this is to use the major sports like baseball and basketball, and how they're covered. They solved the marketing problem a long time ago by making a key realization, which is that the game, in every case, is not actually about the game. It's about the people involved and what the game means to their lives. Who holds the crown, who might hold the crown, what qualities it lets them show the world, the pursuit of their dreams, how it affects their personal relationships, and what the wins and losses mean to the audience. And you can see just how well they've developed this approach. On the front page of ESPN.com, for example, as I write this, you can see that there are no X's and O's, no inside baseball, as they say. It's all about the people involved in each sport and how the sport affects their lives. And right off the bat, this is the first thing that I think could help chess. Right now, the coverage of chess is almost all about chess. It's all inside baseball. But if you look at the fans and what they talk about in comment sections, you can see that there's just not much interest in that. Even when I follow chess, I focus on reading the chat rooms, the comment sections, the people who analyze on YouTube, and what they think of the players and the best moves. On some occasions, I definitely do look at the moves themselves for their aesthetic appeal. But even then, my favorite game is a brilliancy from 1963. And the truth is, one of the major reasons I like it is that the grandmasters commenting on it thought that white had lost the game when black gave up. And you can see this bear out with the public in general. Garry Kasparov is famous not just for being the king of chess, but because of his battles with chess computers, where he basically was seen as defending the human brain's intelligence against that of machines, which added a huge amount of tension. Likewise, Bobby Fischer was the most famous player of all time, not because of the technical moves he played, but because of the dominance he showed over other players and the fact that he was American, which here meant that his challenge of the Russian chess machine and eventual victory confirmed things a lot of people wanted to be true. And when Fischer won, it created a giant chess boom in the United States, and also a huge amount of increased money for him and the players, at least for a while. Which leads us all to one idea. The game of chess is the means and not the end. It's not the destination. It's the vehicle that gets you there. And that's the best way to talk about it. Let me show you what I mean. The current world chess champion is Magnus Carlsen. At one point, he was also the highest rated player who ever lived, above Bobby Fischer and Garry Kasparov. But in the last year or two, Magnus has been slipping. He's still champion and world number one, but his rating took a major dip, to the point that now other top players could actually pass him if they have a winning streak, which would be devastating, because it would basically ruin Magnus's chances to top Garry Kasparov's record for spending the most years as the number one ranked player. And in fact, Vladimir Kramnik, who was rated number 2 in the world, and also the guy who dethroned Garry Kasparov, tried to do just that by passing Magnus's rating. Kramnik had a tournament recently where he started off with a game that was a draw, and he tried to force his way to a win to catch Magnus. It ended up backfiring, and he's since dropped a few places in the ratings. But things are still dangerously close, and Magnus has to be very careful to hold on. I think all of that is pretty interesting. And even more so, you don't need to know anything about the actual game of chess to follow it. Now, chess experts, by being able to understand the games in progress, will be able to follow more of that process and see how one player is heading towards those other things, but there's a way to handle that too. And this is where we start to get a little fancy. You see, chess isn't the only classic tabletop game. There's also poker. And as you probably know, poker had a huge boom in interest in the early 2000s. Partially due to the story around Chris Moneymaker winning the World Series of Poker main event, but mainly due to something else. And it was called the whole card camera, which let the fans see the players' cards during the game. Before then, you really didn't know what was going on during a poker game, but being able to see the players' cards let the audience know who was bluffing and who wasn't, and thus see the skill, the tension as players tried to hide their lies from each other when they didn't have a good hand, and it let the audience feel anticipation, knowing what the right move was and wondering whether their favorite player would make it.
He's actually considering mucking his jacks full, which would be an unconscious laydown. I mean, if he lays this down, I'll move to a Franciscan monastery and become head chef.
Now at first, the poker players weren't comfortable with this, because it let everyone see how they played. But they made so much more money off of the marketing and new players and sponsorships that it was a huge bonus for them. And right now, chess is in a similar spot. Historically, only chess experts could get any entertainment out of watching the game itself. Now you can use a computer to know what the best move is for a player to make, which has helped somewhat with the ability to follow the game. But you can take that much further with an innovation inspired by the whole card camera. But in this case, what you would do is give each player a hidden extra board that they can use to play out and test the moves they're mentally calculating during the game, which is the mock-up that I've put on the screen. I think this would make chess much more marketable, because it would let fans see things that they want to know during a game, but previously haven't had access to, such as seeing how close a player is to making the move that the computer deems best, when a player is confused or about to make a mistake, which would add tension, and to help answer a classic question, how many moves deep each player is calculating. You wouldn't even have to require the players to use the board, since being able to calculate on a separate board makes it much easier to play. On top of that, there are already chess boards which can automatically sense moves and send them to a display. So to do this with the small calculation boards would be no problem. I think this by itself would have a huge effect on making chess more marketable. But on top of that, you could take some other cues from ESPN SportsCenter and Poker TV by editing televised coverage down to the key points in a match, skipping the opening moves and going right to key sacrifices or mistakes, or where the players spotted or missed the most interesting things. This is exactly the kind of stuff that I desperately try to find when I search for chess coverage online. And of course, this isn't to say that this would be as big as the superhero movie boom, but I used to desperately search for superhero movies in the 90s too, before Hollywood started making them en masse and grossing huge amounts of money. So it indicates that there's probably some interest there. On top of that, you can also give more access to the players in other ways. I've seen games played where the players were actually interviewed at the board, which I found incredibly interesting.
I don't think I got a particularly good position. Now I'm quite worried, but I'm hoping to survive.
But which wasn't taken any further. This would give similar access to the player's thought process, but also help you attach some personal interest to them and whether they win or lose. Along the same lines, chess and chess masters can be intimidating to most people, and you can help that by humanizing the players more, showing their difficulties in normal life while also appealing to people's interest by still showing their ability to play games blindfolded and do other impressive things. Chess is and always has been an amazing game that has taught us a lot about the human mind, and emphasizes personal traits that you almost never see glorified in other forms of competition. So I appreciate the efforts that many people have made to promote it to the world and grow the base of players. And I think with a few changes like these, you could not only do that, but see the game reach a level of fan interest that it never has before. If you liked this vid, share it. Thanks for your time, and stay tuned.